Yeah. There's going to be so much to edit in this one. Hey everyone, how's it going? We're back with Chapter 4 of our read-along of Archangel. If you've missed any of the first 3 chapters, I'll leave a link in the description down below for the playlist where you can watch them all, and then join us back here when you're ready. Chapter 4 is one of my favorite chapters because we get introduced to our villain, who you'll meet in a few moments. And that villain has become a fan favorite too, so it's not just me that loves him. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. There they stood, 24 beasts dragged straight from the pits of hell. Drool ran from their maws with the promise of fresh prey. Their pale eyes took on a new glow at the prospect of feeling blood trickle through their teeth and plaster their gray fur. It was hard to tell any of them apart, their elongated limbs and fingers matching the ones standing beside them, their canine snouts identical, save for a few scars or broken bones that the demons had gathered since the apocalypse had begun those many years ago. These, the low-born demons, wanted nothing more than to hunt, defile, and kill, and they were all under his command. The man in black stood facing the horde of demons. Perhaps he had brought too many along with them. The beasts were most effective in numbers, but he may have discontent among his ranks if there was not enough prey to go around. The man had been ordered to cleanse this human settlement, a group of filth who had openly revolted against his master. The fools. What did they think a handful of humans could do against his master's legions? What hope did they have? Regardless, the humans would be put in their place. They would be a warning for any who dared to harbor the same rebellious thoughts. Turn around, my love. The voice was beautiful and cruel all at once. Look at what awaits us. The woman stood by his side, her gray glazed eyes belying little more life than the ones possessed by the demons. She wore a black lace dress that extended from a collar around her throat down to her ankles. It highlighted her features perfectly, but it did nothing for the man. The witch was just a constant memory of a better time, a sick perversion of his life before this one. The man turned away from his horde of demons and regarded the handful of structures that dotted the horizon. The townspeople had already noticed their approach, most likely knew of them for over a day now if their sentries were half decent. The ones that his demons couldn't find, that is. Their persistence had cost him the lives of 6 demons just getting here, but casualties did not bother him. Every low-born demon could be replaced. Every dog was expendable for his crusade. He saw a line of humans, men and women, standing between the 2 foremost buildings. One was a 2-story house and the other some long, rectangular structure that looked as if it were barely standing. It was too far to see them clearly, but the humans were undoubtedly brandishing rusted machetes and hatchets, or some sort of homemade weaponry. The sentries they had encountered thus far were poorly equipped, but still managed to be effective with what they had. The man raised a gloved hand to his face, a feature that was hidden inside a black hood. He sighed and nodded, weary of this busy work that his master sent him on. Humans may be prey for demons, but they were not the ones he was hunting. Go. His voice was quiet, but still the words were carried to the ears of each and every demon. Have your fun. The creatures howled and roared as they took off past him, like a current of blurred, bloodthirsty water rushing by. The demons started on 2 legs as they picked up speed. Clang sounded as they dropped their weapons to the ground and ran on all 4s. They much preferred to hunt with their claws and their fangs. The humans were a long way off, a journey that would have taken the group 20 minutes or longer to walk. But when a horde of demons could see their prey, they became something else entirely. Their gaunt bodies looked like nothing more than stretched skin plastered onto elongated bones. While their teeth and claws were as sharp as blades, their tall, skinny bodies looked almost sickly. But at the prospect of spilling blood, the demons revealed their true strength. They moved so quickly that even his trained eyes could barely distinguish where they were. Their strength was that of 5 men, if not more. Their brutality was unmatched. When the beast had covered half the distance to the town, a loud bang ripped through the air. One of the demons toppled over in its run, taking a moment to right itself even as dark blood poured from its gut. Only the best marksman could land a kill shot on a moving demon, but this one had been slowed. The man was not surprised to hear another gunshot precede half the beast's head exploding. More gunshots followed, some of them missing but most of them finding marks. Only one bullet managed to take a demon down with its first shot, a shot that tore through the shriveled breast of a female demon and obliterated its black heart. By the methodical shooting, the man in black knew that this was an experienced marksman. Given the chance, they would have taken out half his demons before they could even reach the line of humans. But there was only one shooter, probably only one gun in this entire town, and he had spotted where the shots were coming from. Isabel, please take care of our sharpshooter. He pointed towards the 2-story house that flanked the defensive line. The witch smiled at him and gave a mocking curtsy. There was a flash of movement as her familiar, a disgusting perversion of a man and a beast, scurried after her. The pair had barely walked a quarter of the distance to the town, but it was close enough for the woman. The air swirled around Isabel's raised fist, which now crackled with black energy. Dark lightning leapt from her closed hand and connected with the ground as if trying to escape her terrible grasp. The witch uttered an infernal word and opened her hand towards the sniper's nest. A jagged path of darkness formed between her and the house as black lightning tore towards the shooter's hiding place. Isabel grinned at the sure kill. But the lightning never made it to the house. Just a few meters before its walls, the spell was stopped as it collided with an unseen barrier, one that glowed yellow and cracked after the lightning smashed into it. The shield, the man briefly saw, was a domed wall that stood between the humans and the demons, effectively keeping anything, even spells, out. Now it was the man's turn to smile, unseen from the dark shadow of his hood. He recognized this type of magic, and he doubted any human had conjured it. His blood pumped faster at the prospect of fighting an angel. "This just got a little more interesting," Isabel snickered, eyeing the man in black. The wave of demons had reached the barrier by now, but they slammed against it like a wave against a cliff. Some of them scrambled over top of each other, clawing at the magical wall. A few of them, the handful that bore some intelligence, barked a few words of infernal, slamming the shield with invisible waves of force and balls of hungry fire. All the while, the shooter continued their methodical barrage of lead, and the humans just beyond the shield stirred in anticipation. They held their meager weapons in front of them, as if they did not trust the magical barrier. "Destroy that barrier before I reach it. Get rid of the shooter, and let our demons have their hunt." The man drew his twin swords from his hips, black sabers that seemed to mock the dim light around them. "The angel is mine." The man in black took off in a run, his cloak trailing behind him only to reveal more dark vestments, thick leather that shrouded his body. Terrible, jagged designs were stitched and etched into the leather, displaying a mosaic of horror across his body. The witch began to cast again, alternating hands as she channeled and released more lightning. Each bolt slammed into the glowing barrier, each one creating larger cracks in its surface. In between spells, the witch could see some of the cracks mending themselves. The angel was trying to repair its shield, but it was not moving fast enough. This was no longer its world. This world belonged to darkness. The witch channeled energy into both of her hands and brought them up before her. She released both at once, the spells resonating with one another to create a single devastating blast of energy. The barrier was unable to hold the magic back and shattered under the spell's assault, like a pane of glass breaking into a million specks of glittering dust. The demons, only half the amount that had initially charged the town, flooded forth now that their dam was broken. The shooting increased in frequency, but more and more shots missed their marks. With nothing but crude weapons and a faltering confidence against them, the demons swarmed over the humans. There were not even enough men, women, or children in the line to meet the beasts 2 to 1. The rusted blades and tools tore at hollow gray flesh and spilled black blood, but it was barely enough to slow the horde down. The demons set their deadly fangs and claws to work. With their mouths they tore out the throats of some and crushed through the bones of others. With their hands they disemboweled their prey and tore deep into flesh and muscle. A woman cried as she watched what could have been her son, barely an adult, be torn in half by 2 demons, only to have a third silence her as it removed her head from her shoulders. "I'm dark." Isabel, far from the battle, turned her attention to the sniper. Still it fired at the demons and managed to do more damage to their ranks. It was no wonder the demon lords destroyed most of the firearms they came across. The devastation they could cause was painted right before her eyes. Though all but a few of the humans lay dead or dying, only 4 or 5 demons remained. The lives of some demons may have been inconsequential, but she was tasked with keeping her partner safe so he could return to their master. Since he had almost made it to where the demons had amassed a small pond of blood and bodies, Isabel had to make short work of this marksman. She focused her thoughts on the building and drew intricate symbols in the air, muttering a few words of infernal as she went. Isabel could feel the dark energy building inside her, begging to be released. Then the witch clapped her hands together in front of her, allowing the vile magic to do her bidding. The release was almost sensual. A breath passed before the ground trembled, an omen of what she had done. Suddenly, an array of massive crystals, amethysts with deep red veins running through them, shot out of the ground and pierced through the building. The columns then sprouted offshoots of smaller, more jagged crystals, which in turn sprouted some of their own. The process continued again and again, filling every inch of space within the house with jagged, tearing crystals. The only sign that the witch was successful was an arm, bloodied from where it had been torn from its body, hanging from one of the gems. The man in black ignored the destroyed house and the line of bodies as he continued into the town. What few demons were left discarded their victims and were ahead of him, 4 beasts circling a lone figure that stood in the middle of the cracked road. The figure, a woman, slowly followed their movements, doing her best to keep her eyes on each creature. Her left arm boasted a small steel buckler that crawled with fluid swooping engravings and runes. In her right hand she held a spear, its wooden shaft reinforced with bands of steel, the same metal that formed the small spike on the butt of the weapon and the broad, deadly spearhead on its top. Her pale skin glistened in the dim red light of midday, but it, too, was covered in ornate markings. Another piece of steel glinted in the pale light, a slim halo that encircled her neck, nearly hidden by her long, matted blonde hair. One of the demons, a male whose gray fur was now wet with blood, snarled as it ran at the angel, dashing on 2 legs and aiming for her heart with its claws. Demons crave the taste of an angel's heart, but the angel had a different plan. She punched out with her left, catching the rim of the steel buckler in the demon's throat. The creature stumbled backwards and clawed at its crushed windpipe, desperately trying to draw breath. Without hesitating, the angel pivoted and swung her spear in a wide arc, letting it slide to its full reach and grasping it just before the deadly spike at its base. The steel blade that crowned the weapon was so sharp that the next demon barely noticed as his throat was cut open, still grinning in excitement as his lifeblood sprayed out in front of it. The angel swung the spear up and over, so it rested on her shoulders behind her head, with the blade pointing the same direction as her buckler. The third demon did not register the movement in time to avoid the quick thrust of the weapon, thinking that it only had the angel's shield to contend with. The steel of the spear had proved it wrong, however, as it slipped through its neck and severed the demon's spine. The last demon, realizing that the angel's flank was exposed, charged with reckless abandon, its maw frothing. A flick of the angel's wrist retracted the spear from the dead demon's spine and sent it sliding along the warrior's shoulder again. The spike on the butt of the spear bit into the last living demon's chest, but not enough to deliver a lethal blow. Still, the warrior angel drove farther out with the butt of her weapon and used her leg to hook around the demon's ankle, tripping the beast and sending it to the ground. Without giving it a moment's reprieve, the angel dropped on top of the beast's chest and punched at its face, connecting her steel buckler with its skull again and again until nothing was left but a red paste where its head should have been. By the time the man in black got anywhere close to the angel, it had already dispatched the 4 hellish creatures. If the man did not hold such seething hatred for the warrior and her ilk, he would have been impressed. Instead, he readied his twin ebony blades and allowed the angel to stand. The divine warrior assumed a defensive stance, placing her buckler between the 2 of them and holding her spear high. As she studied her opponent, the angel's face softened, just a fraction. You are human," she mourned, looking around at the demons she had slain, the beast that had followed this man's command. Why? Why do you side with the monsters? Why do you kill your own kind?" "I do not answer to you." The man's voice was cold, devoid of any emotion that was not hatred. He sized up his opponent, noting the grace with which she had eliminated the demons. That buckler was as much a weapon as it was a shield, and that spear was more versatile than he had given her credit for. The angel's eyes were sad when they met his again. It wasn't just sorrow for the murdered townspeople, but pity for this man before her. "Not in this life, perhaps." The angel assumed her defensive posture again. The man held both blades at his side loosely. The angel may have been innately stronger than him, but his master had given him all the tools he needed to combat the soldiers of heaven. Still, his biggest advantage was the fact that he was human. No angel wanted to fight a human, much less kill one. It went against their wiring, caused every one of their instincts to scream. They were protectors of humanity, or so many of them believed, but he knew the truth. The man launched himself forward, recklessly assailing the angel with a flurry of blows. There was no rhythm to his movements, nothing that indicated any sort of form or style. He brought his ebony sabers in from either side, from above and below. He stabbed and slashed, leapt and pivoted as he tried to find an opening, any opening. The angel met every attack with a move of her own, dodging or blocking with her buckler. The pitch black of his blades was a stark contrast to the gleaming silver of her shield, as if the 2 opposing colors refused to mix. His blades were knocked away, no matter which angle he came from. After yet another successful deflection, the angel locked her legs and parried the attack, driving the blade of her spear towards the man's shoulder. That was her first mistake. The angel was holding back, was not trying to kill her human opponent. He made sure to make her pay for her error, rolling away from the attack while bringing down one of his blades down on her exposed arm. The blade bit deep, scratching against the bones in her forearm. The angel screamed as blood poured from the wound. Her opponent retreated, taking a moment to catch his breath after his assault. He watched as the angel's buckler moved to the gash, hovering over it as her hand glowed yellow underneath. When she revealed her forearm again, the angel did not even have a scar where the sword had torn at her. Without warning, the angel sprinted at him, covering half the distance between the 2 in a flash before leaping into the air. She used her momentum to drive her spear forward, aiming straight for the man's heart. He knew he couldn't block her attack, not with such force behind it, so he tried to deflect it and score another counter. The angel seemed more prepared this time, immediately spinning full circle when her attack did not connect and swinging her buckler in a wide arc. She smashed the shield into his counterattack, knocking the saber clear from the man's hand. The blade landed with a soft thud, its blade embedded in the dry, arid soil. Without wasting a breath, the angel planted her heel and spun back around, sweeping her spear at her adversary's feet. It was not a killing blow, but it would surely be followed by one if she managed to trip the human. But the man reacted in a way she would not have expected. He drove his last remaining blade halfway into the ground, edge facing the sweeping spear. It was enough to stop the angel's assault, and it took her a second to understand what was happening, but it was a second she could not afford. The man reached out with both free hands and grabbed her buckler, using his surprise and its leverage to pull the angel to the ground. She landed on top of her spear, her exposed throat just below her halo, a hair's breadth away from the hungry black blade. Her shield arm still in his hands, he forced it behind her body and stomped a boot down on the angel's shoulder. She was too stunned to cry out in pain, but the sickening crunch of bones was enough to tell him what happened. Before the angel could do anything, the man in black brought his other foot to bear, kicking the angel's head towards his blade. It was nearly enough force to decapitate her. Only a few cords of muscle were spared from the blade's vicious edge. By the time Isabel sauntered into the town, the man had finished removing the angel's head and had skewered it on her own spear. The spear stood in the middle of the town, a warning to any who might pass through that dissent would not be tolerated, and harboring an angel would condemn anyone to a fate worse than death. "What took you so long?" The man's voice was coarse and filled with rage. For the angel, for this world, for everything that had happened to him. "I thought I would let you enjoy yourself," the witch said, giggling. It was an ugly sound. She placed a hand teasingly on his arm. "Besides, I saw the whole thing. It was incredible." The man brushed her hand off him. She sighed and pouted. "Besides," the disappointed Isabel continued, "I got a message from our master. We have new prey." The man wiped the blood and dirt off his blade using the angel's frayed, stained clothes. They reeked of stale water and decay, though what didn't this far out from a city these days? "I grow weary of slaughtering entire towns. He can send one of his hordes in a general if he wants." "It's not a human we are after." The witch smiled with teeth that were impossibly white. "I have been told that an angel managed to break through the clouds yesterday." She could not see the fire flicker back to life in his eyes from underneath his hood, but she knew that it was there. Still, he shook his head. "Impossible." He sheathed his blades. "Nothing can break through the clouds, or they would have years ago, unless it was an archangel," she finished for him. The man's body went numb, save for small pinpricks that crept over his flesh. An archangel. He had yet to claim the head of one of those. "There are only 3 of them left now, but the other 2 have been smart enough to hide." "You do not need to remind me," the man snapped. He could feel his bloodlust rising. "Where did the creature break through?" The witch traced the many patterns etched into his leather armor. "Near Zezerat, the city of Bodis. It is only a few days from where you stand." The man spat on the ground. Bodis was a snake, one of the few high demons that was smart enough to be cunning but too weak to do anything himself. They had dealt with Bodis before, and it had taken conscious effort not to run the demon through with his blades. "Zezerat it is. We will go immediately." Before he could take a step, the witch snapped her fingers. Every muscle in the man's body froze, his entire frame completely paralyzed. He was helpless to resist as Isabel beckoned him over to a nearby building, a single-story house that held pictures of children and their toys. Against his will, the man stepped inside. "We can leave in the morning. You are mine tonight," she cackled as she led him upstairs. The man in black let the witch have his body, but his mind went elsewhere. It went to a time when angels were good, when this thing on top of him was his wife, not some abomination. It went to a time when he was a father. Chapter 4 done. Except I forgot to put a bookmark in there. Alright, and that was chapter 4 of Archangel. One of my favorite early chapters, and it introduces this mysterious man in black who is able to go toe-to-toe with an angel despite being human himself, and his companion Isabel. We'll learn more about those two as the story progresses, but know that the man in black is one of my favorite characters, one of the fans' favorite characters. If you've already read the book, you know who I'm talking about. And it was a cool chapter because it's a fight scene. And one of the things that I love writing most are fight scenes. Don't get me wrong. I love the whole story. I love putting together all the elements, seeing the characters grow. But I love writing fight scenes. And it's super dynamic and super fun. And I hope that that was conveyed when you were listening to it or when you were reading it yourself. One of the other things that I really like about this chapter, and that I actually kind of regret, is the angel herself that's in it. And I never named her. There might be a name in one of my notes. I'm not going to pretend like I made this entire character just for this one scene. I had this idea in my mind. And I wanted to bring it to life. And this idea of this angel that embodies essentially a Valkyrie of Norse mythology was born. And I think she's super cool. I think there was a lot of potential there. But now she's dead. So it's not, I don't make it a secret. That's one of my regrets, killing her off. I think it's a really cool scene, and I think it proves the point that I want it to prove. But I miss her. You know, I wish she stuck around. So we'll see how we can kind of embody that Valkyrie spirit later in the Shadows Advent series. But for now, rest in pieces, Valkyrie. So let me know what you think about this first fight scene in the book, about the introduction of this mysterious man in black who is able to kill an angel and commands a horde of demons. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'll leave some links below to the playlist of Let's Read, my Patreon if you want to support me, a link to get three free short stories. My voice is so raw right now. I had to take a break from recording, drive for an hour, and I was singing for most of that, so forgive me. But yeah, check out the links below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week for Chapter 5. See ya. That's going in the final cut. It's not. It's weird.